This is Spec Ops, The Line. We're here on Xbox Series S. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. So this is a game that is now delisted. So the only way you can really play this on the Series S is if you had owned it prior, which obviously I have owned it digitally prior. So I'm able to dive in and experience this game and talk about it. And it is a shame that it is delisted. It'd be great if they are able to someday relist it, but since this game has a pretty intense soundtrack, and also I don't think was necessarily like the biggest hit out there, it's probably going to be forgotten about until maybe someday it gets a remastering, which would be fantastic, but I'm not holding my breath and expecting that to be a thing, which is such a shame because I do think this is one of those games where if you do play shooters, it is a game that you should experience at some point because it is special guest me. Oh, look at that. You see that? I do find this one to be somewhat profound in terms of narrative, gameplay, the style of what it is, and mostly what the story is trying to say. I do think that in itself is quite interesting. So this was a game that had a single-player campaign that you can enjoy, and also an online multiplayer, which I actually did some feedback stuff on back when I was quite a bit younger, which is sort of funny. And yeah, that's been dead for basically since launch, the multiplayer. I think even the devs weren't too happy about wasting resources on that particular mode, which is kind of hilarious. Basically, I'm the reason the guys don't go like breathe heavily in the multiplayer, but you know, it's not like we'll be able to show that off ever, which is actually a bit of a shame too, because the multiplayer, I don't know, it's okay. It's just kind of a generic, tacked on, you know, kind of multiplayer for the time, but there was modes and stuff in it, and yeah, just a bit of a shame that stuff like that, it was really common back in the 360 era, even today still, to have like a tacked on multiplayer, and I kind of wish that time would have went more into the single player. It's not like a lengthy single player experience, but I do think it is one that, like I said, is quite worthwhile to play, and it's one that you really, if you do ever get the experience of playing this game, like you can still get a disc and play it on the Series X if you're, you know, playing it somewhere else and stuff like that. It's best not to read into what the game is ahead of playing it. Nothing you'll see here, like this is just kind of the opening of the game. Nothing here will spoil anything for you, specifically, at least I don't believe it should. But the game itself, 4 hours or so or more, depending on difficulty. There's different challenges, and you know, there's like collectibles to find, and a little bit of choice, but not really a choice. It's sort of like a bit of the facade of a choice that you can make, and yeah, it's neat. Like I said, I do think if you play a lot of first-person shooters, or well, I guess shooters in general, this is definitely something you should experience because it does make you think, I think, for the first time, really about what you're doing in a first-person or in a shooter. I always think of FPS. I should also mention that this is a game that is running at 720p, 30 FPS, auto HDR. I do think it looks pretty good for the time. Obviously, it is jaggedy around the edges. It's not, you know, incredibly sharp, but I think it holds up okay. The game is your pretty typical shooter. I think that was the idea of it too, was that it's very much a regular run-of-the-mill cover-based shooter, but it's more about what happens and the story and a lot of the stuff in this game. It's really, really quite fascinating, honestly. I do think this is something that you probably should experience just from the perspective, like, of being curious about what this game is and the concepts that it is deploying, where it really does make you kind of think, you know, what am I doing here? So at the beginning, you're, like you've been seeing here, there's a bit of a speech about a guy and how you looked up to this guy and everything like that, and then you're here in Dubai, and Dubai basically has had this situation where sandstorms have come in, It's caused unrest in the region, and now you are coming in here and basically trying to figure out what happened, because there was this radio signal from someone that's supposed to be, you know, thought long kind of gone or whatever, because basically they sent in this, like, squad of, I guess you would say, basically a Marine battalion, like a whole group, and their goal was to stabilize the area and help with evacuation. Something happened, things didn't go well, and now you are sent in to figure out what exactly happened, what's going on, and you're just kind of stuck in the middle of this situation where things are going kind of bad. And you're not sure about anything. You're just a guy with your group, with your close group, which is the team that you're with throughout the story. You're just literally, you know, trying to figure out what's going on. And there's a lot of twisting of what happens and what you're actually seeing. There's some really shocking moments. You know, never forget the phosphorus. But yeah, that's where, again, I'm trying to, like, to a degree, dance around the concepts of this game, because I do think it is something worth checking out, even if you don't, you know, obviously with the delisting and stuff like that, obviously, you know, a little hard to check it out on Series S, which is the worst shame, honestly. But, you know, if you can experience it somewhere, you can play it somewhere, I do highly recommend it, because I do think it is such a special experience. It's such a neat game, and it's got so much,
the hell was that?
You know, behind it, so much going on in it, that I think you'll find it to be a rewarding time. And it's definitely, again, it's something of its era, but it's still, I think, pretty decent looking too. And I love the concept as well of how you keep kind of going lower as the story kind of progresses. I thought that really reinforced things in a fascinating kind of way, where despite you being in this, like, place, it is interesting to see how the elevation and everything changes over time, and it's genuinely quite a fascinating offering. It's got some, like, cool little slow-mo bits, and like I said, I think it gets the job done pretty effectively of being something unique. I don't know if the ideas of the game are quite as fascinating to people nowadays, where there have been similar games, if that makes sense. Like, there's been concepts and stuff like that similar to this since this time. But I still do think this is something where if you go in and play it, you'll be a little bit surprised by what the game is, what it has to offer, and just the story here, seeing it get revealed. And it's very traumatic, like, it's quite messed up. And then there's also deeper thought as to, like, what actually happened, what went on when you were doing this. And there's, again, the facade of a choice.
Okay, stay cool. We're almost there.
You know, like, what you're doing in the game, they're all choices, but, like, the choices are kind of limited, because it's still, like, you have to play through things, right? That's how video games work, is you play them, right? Like, that's the gaming experience, is you have to play through a game, because, you know, well, you don't have to, but you buy it, you pay for it, obviously you're gonna want to experience it and see, you know, what the game is. And it's really genuinely fascinating to me, this game. And I did stream it, so, like, you know, it's something you can check out on the channel if you actually want to watch all of what it is. But I thought I would do, like, a highlighted video talking about it too, because I was like, you know, I kind of took a look at it, and then I just kind of left it alone for a long time, and I'm sitting there being like, why didn't I kind of do more to showcase and promote this one while it was still available to people? I don't know. You kind of think of games as just kind of always being there. And then after the fact, when they're gone, you're kind of like, oh, well, it's gone, right? Like, That's the thing with these legacy games, right? Is like, who knows how long any of these are going to be. But you can say that about any gaming experience. None of it's forever, right? Like, the games, they come, they go. That's just kind of how that stuff works, right? Like, everything is finite. Which is a little disappointing, too, because, you know, there's some solid experiences out here. Like this one. Like, this is definitely something I think future shooter fans and generations of shooter fans should experience, because it makes you actually think about things. And while there are a lot of games out there that are shooters that, like, make you think, this one actually really has, I think, some insightful and interesting commentary on, like, that idea of what we're doing when we're playing a shooter game and what the situations we're actually seeing in a shooter game kind of are. I don't know, it's genuinely interesting. Like, I think this one, to me, kind of stands the test of time, and it'll definitely be something I think from a shooter perspective I will be thinking of for many, probably decades to come, honestly. Like, it's something that I've thought of since I first played it. And I've revisited it occasionally. And I just think it's got really good shock value moments and stuff like that. And there may be some level of, like, oh, it's not quite at that level of profound play or something like that. And I just really strongly disagree. I think this game truly has something interesting to it. It's pretty well acted to, from, like, performances and, like, the way things are questioned. Because I think the masterful setup here for the writing and stuff is the fact that, like, you don't really believe exactly anything until it's actually revealed. Like, you're not figuring it out. And even, like, replaying it after a long time span, it's still sitting there where I'm like, my mind isn't just being like, I know what happens. The story reveals itself very well, and if you're playing it from a fresh, like, blind perspective going in, you will certainly be like, oh, wow, and it's just the way it reveals itself to you, I think lends well for, like, a perspective of, you could have possibly figured things out or understood what was actually going on and everything, but you're very likely not going to be able to, as you just get sucked into the story and you're just kind of working along, trying to do stuff, figure out what happened, and work through it. I also really like the environments of this game. It's linear, but there's a great sense of scale. I think Dubai is such a fascinating location for this type of game. I really genuinely think that they've got such a cool spot here, and I think there's, what is there, intel here or something like that? Intelligence? I don't need it, though, because, like, resets every time you go about this. Yeah, but the spaces you go are really, really quite cool, and there's a great sense of destructibility, too, which was all the rage in the time for shooters and stuff. But, like, no, seriously, you can really carve the environment up in the right ways, not like you're, oh, we're making walls and stuff like that. But it's kind of cool seeing you basically, like, shred certain environments, like if you get in a big helicopter or something like that. You're seeing things explode, you're seeing things break apart, you're seeing the action kind of go, and then there's also lots of, you know, your damage from, like, the sand, right? Like, the sand is a big part of this world too, right? Like, the sand is something that's all around you, and as you kind of damage things, like, you might notice, oh, I shoot out the glass here, sand comes down, or I take out a barrier, sand comes down, and it takes people out and stuff like that. And that's really, really cool, just seeing that damage of the world. And lots of games, again, do that. It's not uncommon. It's just, like, I do like the effect of it in this one, especially with the environment being so sandy. And despite it being just a sandy environment, you do actually visit a plethora of different locations across this area. That is really quite neat. You get to see, like, the sense of luxury, but also a sense of, like, hey, this place is completely fallen apart. It's apocalyptic. It's chaotic. There's, like, sick, torturous things here. And that is well done. and then you coming in breaking things further, and you know, all the twists and turns and all that, and somebody with a little bit of taunting on the radio is fun. It just, like, it all comes together in a very satisfying way. There's actually quite a few different guns and weapons and tools that you can come across, and you get like light support elements from your team where they actually do stuff and help you out, and they also question what's going on and question things, but they still, you know, follow your orders to an absolute T, and that in itself might be a layering too to the story. Like, it's one where you play it and then you read about what happened after you played it, because it is so interesting. And I think that is a good, to me, that's the mark of a good story, especially for a video game, where you've played it and you want to know more about it, or you're curious about more about it, or like you understood it but you wanted to have like more of a discussion about it. To me, I love when video games have that sort of thing to them, and there's very few out there that actually have that. So the fact that this game was able to so effectively do that, I think was really great. And the marking of something where I'm like, this is a special game that should be checked out by people, because of those elements of it. See, it's something that's easy and fun to talk about, and some neat mechanics too for hiding behind cover and shooting things. Like, it was something that was a bit more towards the tail end of its gen, I guess. But the gameplay and stuff holds up to me pretty well. It's supposed to be your sort of a run-of-the-mill shooter, and I think I feel that a bit more in the modern era too, but yeah, I don't know. I like this one. I think it's a really cool experience. I think it is something that should be checked out. I don't know if even the gameplay here really shows off its hooks effectively, fully, but it should hopefully give you an idea of the look of it, and how it's running, and just basically, if this intrigues you, it's something you should try to seek out if you can. And I know it's a lot harder because of, you know, the annoyances of, whoa, licensing and stuff like that, which sucks, but, you know, that's just how it works, right? Uh-oh. And I don't like that about gaming, but yeah, it's just rough, because I should have done more of a push behind this to get people involved in it. I just really wasn't thinking of that. And then bam, it's just kind of gone, and you're like, oh wow, that's kind of it, right? Like, it's over, right? Because it is one of those games where it's like, I don't know if it's something that's like people's favorite nostalgia thing, and like I said, this game's got a crazy cool like soundtrack to it. There's really good, you know, beats in this, and some great music and stuff, and then you're kind of like, oh, that's why. They're everywhere. Seeing the sandstorm bits and stuff, super cool. I don't know, I think it uses its set pieces and areas effectively, and it just provides a fun, cool, good amount of challenge. Like, you can die really, really quickly in this one. Like, obviously, things are easy going right now for me as I try to get this achievement going, but it is something that can actually provide like quite a bit of a challenge. There's some areas which are just ridiculous, and I'm kind of like those uber hardcore difficulty ones. I'm like, I don't know how you
Anyone see a way out of here?
I don't know how you get past those bits, honestly. Like, I imagine those ones would be quite the challenge, but yeah, basically I hope I kind of piqued your interest, and maybe you'll give Spec Ops: The Line a chance, or at least maybe go watch me play it, just so you can actually experience what this game's like and see what it is. And I don't know, just mostly it's one of those games where I'm kind of like, I really hope it doesn't end up just getting forgotten, because I think it's a really cool, genuinely unique shooter, and I like the questions that it aims to pose for the player that's experiencing this game.